Good evening, and thank you for watching. My name is Hank Stevenson. I'm the co-founder of the Arizona Agenda, a daily newsletter covering Arizona politics and government, and I'll be the moderator for this evening's event. The Citizens Clean Election Commission is the sponsor of this event. As the state's voter education agency, Clean Elections host debates, so voters have the opportunity to hear directly from the candidates, ask questions on the issues that matter most to them, and vote informed. Candidates that have a contested general election have been invited to participate. The questions that will be asked this evening are coming directly from voters. Leading up to the debates, Clean Elections conducted outreach to voters across the state, asking them for questions for candidates. Additionally, Clean Elections surveyed voters to learn what issues are important to them. This survey data, along with input from the experienced journalists at the Arizona Agenda, the Arizona Capital Times, and the Green Valley News and Sahuarita Sun, have been utilized to guide the discussion so it best serves voters. Of course, we want to hear directly from you. So, voters that are watching this debate live, you can submit questions at any time. Do that by emailing debates@kc-a.com. or you can text them in to 480-808-1814, or you can even call them in 480-937-1253. We do screen questions for clarity to eliminate duplication, speeches, or personal attacks on candidates. Tonight's event is scheduled for about 30 minutes, so we may not get to all audience questions, but we will do our best. Tonight, we're hearing from one candidate in the race for Legislative District 10, which covers East Mesa and most of Apache Junction. Our candidate tonight is Helen Hunter, a Democrat seeking one of the two House seats in the district. Republicans Justin Heap and Barbara Parker declined to attend tonight's event. Okay, Ms. Hunter, let's start this up. Take a minute or two for introductory statements and to tell the voters a little bit about yourself.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Clean Elections, for allowing me this opportunity. A little bit about me. From my work as a community activist and as a pastor, serving the homeless ministry in Arizona for over 10 years, working as a liaison between the East Valley East Valley police chiefs and the community, and as a board certified chaplain. I am simply sensitive to the needs and the will and the concerns of the people of LD10 and across the state. The state legislature should have elected officials that best represent and reflect the voice of the people and not just the privileged few. I'm running now to be a voice for the communities that see, feel, and know that they do not have a representative voice in the state legislature at this time. As a mother of 3 grown children, a wife, a grandmother, and yes, a great-grandmother, it's crystal clear that the avenues and resources that were available to me back in the 70s and 80s are no longer available to the folks in this time, in this day and age. Avenues and resources like upward mobility and opportunities for child raising and economic and financial security are no longer available for many families today, especially the low income and the single parent households. I am campaigning to help recreate, recapture, restore, and reassign resources for struggling families in Arizona. I'm campaigning for the opportunity to create better economic conditions, to provide equitable public school funding for public schools, better pay for teachers, to effectively manage Arizona's water resources, to effectively improve and advance Arizona's infrastructure, and to maintain law and order, safe schools, and safe communities. And yes, to support our police and provide additional resources, not defund, but provide additional resources for our police to help them help us keep our communities safe. I'm running as a representative democracy candidate, and I want to let you know that representative democracy matters. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hunter. All right, let's start with some questions about the economy. I think a good place to start is a question from voters. Arizonans are suffering some of the highest inflation rates in the country. What is your plan to help ease some of that inflation and its burdens on Arizona's families?
Well, I think one of the biggest things that looms large is the new flat tax rate that was just signed into law. That is inequitable. It places a higher burden on the lower income than on the higher income. I believe it's a 2.5% increase for the flat rate, but it also includes charitable deductions. And I was looking at the figures this week, and it looks like persons making $1 million to $5 million are going to get about $46,000 in their pockets, whereas persons who have $40,000 worth of income a year, they're going to gain about $2 to $8 per family or per taxpayer. So I think that the economy would do much better if the tax structure was geared to help those who need it most, rather than to benefit the privileged few that already have all the resources they need.
Okay. Housing prices, another one we get frequently. Housing prices have increased considerably in Arizona, which was once known for its affordability. Do you have a plan to improve housing affordability in Arizona? If so, what is it?
That's going to require a lot more research for me. I've been providing housing and working on affordable housing for several years now. And I see a lot of roadblocks sometimes with the funding with the state government and the federal government. But my plan would be to seek out additional funding and make sure it's targeted to the communities where it needs to be directed. I'm seeing those, the dollars to assist in affordable housing stock is going to the already established companies, larger real estate companies and so forth, developers who have lots of property and lots of money to put up front. But for the smaller persons like my church and the small nonprofits that we are trying to maintain, do not get the opportunities at the funding. It's definitely a national problem, and it's really looming large here in Arizona. We're on the streets at least once a month on the fourth Sunday with the downtown in Phoenix with the homeless population. And my goal, my drive, my hope is to work to identify resources that I hear are available and make sure they get into the right pockets. Also to engage the cities. I'm in Mesa, to engage the city councils and the other folks who manage a lot of that money, and also the state, who also can allocate some of that money. As right now, we're looking at $1 billion surplus in the budget. Hopefully, the flat tax will not do away with that surplus. But whatever the case, we need to change the tax structure so that folks that can't afford is not eating up all their income by paying an unfair share of the taxes that should be remedied.
Okay, and on a related note, probably the single most common question we get from voters has something to do with Airbnbs. What do you think Arizona should do with Airbnbs? We recently allowed cities a little bit more flexibility in the ability to regulate short-term rentals like that. Is that enough? Should the state do more? Should the state do less?
I'm not sure if I know all the regulations that you're speaking of, but from a general perspective, I think homeowners should have that right to do with their property as they choose, as long as they abide by the city rules and the government restrictions, as long as they honor their neighbors, as noise control and keeping the property attractive and presentable. I think that you should have that right as a property owner, but also to honor the neighbors and those folks who have to live next to that Airbnb.
Okay. Let me ask you, in your district, is there a infrastructure project that you would fight to get fundings or state appropriations for in the state budget? Is there anything out there in the Mesa Apache Junction area that the state really needs to fix that it's been neglecting?
Well, one thing that I've been struggling with and trying to work on is an infrastructure issue with the Twin Knolls property. That's about 3 miles away from my home. It's two large mountains that are, I believe they're county areas, county property, but they're managed by the city of Mesa and or the state. They have been looking at mining that property and impacting about 2,500 residents that live around at the foot of the mountains, the Twin Mountains. And there's some legislation that needs to be introduced to number one, to reclassify that property so that it's not, you do not mine in a residential area. We've worked on that for about 3 or 4 years now, had a little help, but then it kind of, folks dropped the ball in the state legislature. So we're hoping that we can resurrect that effort. That's a huge issue. I'm about 3 miles from that area, and we would still see suffer from the impact of that mining that area and not making that official, making that in the code, make that codified so that that area can never be mined and impact 2,500 residents there. So that's a huge infrastructure issue I would like to see, and I would like to address once I get in the House.
That actually is a good segue to what would the first bill you introduce be if you were elected to the State House?
I think the first bill I would introduce is, I think it would be to do with public school funding. I find that to be a very critical area in the country that impacts not children, parents, families, and the quality of teachers and assistance and support we have for the school system. So I would look at a bill that would restrict public funding to public schools and certainly curtail the voucher system, which I think is not, doesn't look like it's going to be well monitored. There's not going to be a lot of accountability. So the legislation I would be most interested in is to try to rein in the opportunities that are inequitable for the voucher system and to control and make sure that the academic standards are met. So it would be pretty comprehensive to make sure that public schools get the funding they want and need, and that people that have children in private schools do not have the opportunity to take that tax money. I think it's about $7,000 per student, as I understand, that already have the income to pay for private schools anyway. So I think there's just too loose and offers too much opportunity for profiteering and to make the population that really needs that assistance, the public school system, is not getting it. So I would be definitely working hard on that type of legislation.
Okay, I've got a good follow-up for that. Would you vote to eliminate the ESA, the school voucher program altogether if you had the opportunity? Or do you think that there's some role for vouchers for certain groups of people as it had been limited to before the universal voucher law this year?
I don't think I would vote for that. I'd have to do a lot more research on it. It's kind of a new issue this last year. So, but I don't think I would I think there's always room for negotiation and compromise. I do see a place in some areas that the ESA vouchers could be helpful for some students in certain classes of income and so forth. So no, I don't think I would blanketly just do a blanket and say and vote totally against it. I don't have enough information and need a little bit more research on that one.
Okay, and then you had mentioned school funding as well. How much more, the thing that Republicans always say is how much is enough? We've put, rounds of funding into schools over the last couple of years with the 20 by 20 plan, other infusions of cash to our school system. So I guess my question is, it sounds like you don't think our K-12 public education system as a whole is adequately funded. How much more is it going to take, and where should we get that money from? Can you cite a specific revenue source?
Well, I think that the Proposition 208 that was voted on in 2020 by the voters, and it was passed, that money has now been diverted, is no longer available. I think that if we could recapture those funds, that would be a start. That would, I think, at I can't remember all the details, the numbers of that for it, but I understand that would have provided about 50% more funding for teachers and salaries and 25% for grants, and broken up in about 3 different pockets. That's one place to start. And then secondly, we have $1 billion budget, and that may be eaten away now by this new tax law, but that budget should be used to augment and supplement our public schools, because teachers' salaries, as I understand it, that the monies that we have now, they're not enough to increase teacher salaries. Entry-level teachers start at $34,000 a year. And I think there may be a range at 40, 54, but the average new teacher starts at 34, and the average tenured teacher starts at 44. So for the impact and the influence that teachers have on our communities and our students, and they're developing and creating and training the next generation to not have adequate income, where teachers are having to buy their own school supplies. So I heard that some folks online, teachers are going on Facebook asking for people to donate materials. That should not be. That should not be. There should be funding provided. And I think we already have it. The revenue source is there. The tax structure needs to be revisited and made more equitable. And the public schools are first. The will of the people voted for that money to go to public schools, and it's not there, and it should be. So there already is a revenue stream. We need to have it put back in place where it's supposed to be.
Okay. Childcare and preschool costs are unaffordable and in many cases inaccessible for Arizonans. Do you believe the state does enough to help families afford childcare? And if not, what can the state do better?
It's been a while since I dealt with childcare, and I probably need to do a little more research on that. But I do ascribe to the notion that we could do universal all-day kindergarten, number one. I think that would alleviate some of the childcare issues. And then preschool, I think we could make that just a part of the public school system, to offer preschool for parents and individuals who are trying to work and are especially the lower income families. So I think we have 2 things we can do. We can extend make it extend the all-day kindergarten, and then we can also do a universal preschool for our families.
Okay. And on the other end of the spectrum, our state constitution requires Arizona's universities and community colleges to be as nearly free as possible. I guess the question is, do you think we're achieving that? And if not, what is your plan to get us there?
Well, and again, that would need a lot more research, but I did look into that a little bit the last couple of weeks. I have some friends moving in Arizona and some other young folks that are living here. And I did see that there is free tuition for students that qualify, who are eligible. But what I could ascertain, it was for the tuition, about $10,000 for tuition, but there's about $14,000 in housing that's not always accommodated for, and also books and supplies and transportation. So I don't, when it says, how did you phrase that? As free as it can be?
As nearly free as possible is how the Constitution puts it.
That's oxymoron. I'm not sure how you measure that. How you measure what's free as possible. From what I see from our income and revenue and the surpluses we have and the way money is being redistributed in the state, I believe that it could be a little bit more freer. I think it can be, and I think it should be.
Okay. And the one issue that's come up a lot on this campaign cycle is critical race theory. I guess the question I'd like to ask is, what is your understanding of the definition of critical race theory? And 2, is it being taught in our schools, and should it be taught in our schools?
My understanding is that it's not being taught in our schools, but the way I understand CRT is that it's a theory, similar to a thesis that we do have that have a master's and doctors if we've done thesis. So it's a preposition, a thesis, a hypothesis is put forth. It's based on some scientific facts, some observations, but it's a way to explore and look at evidence and other anecdotal evidence as well as statistics to see if race has an impact. Our social mores and our legal mores have any impact on the racial makeup of our society.
And do you think that should be taught in our schools?
I wouldn't make that call. I think that we should be teaching in the schools true history, whatever that looks like, true history. You don't need a theory, a critical race theory. You need a competent, comprehensive, honest, truthful history for everybody in the United States, for all peoples in the United States. And the children should be aware of the history of themselves and the history of others that they interact with on a day-to-day basis. I would not, I don't think it's anything to support. I think it's just a fact that we should be teaching the truth. And I'm seeing across the country that a lot of folks are more ready to believe untruths, than they are to believe the truth. True history is not wrong, it's not bad, and it's better for all the citizens involved to understand yourselves and those around you.
Okay, a big issue. The U.S. Supreme Court recently overturned the Roe versus Wade precedent on abortion access. And I guess the question that I'd like to ask you is, now that state policymakers are in charge of deciding the law on abortion in Arizona, what parameters to abortion, if any, do you believe could be justified? Are there any restrictions to abortion that you would support?
Well, I guess minimally, the restrictions I would see is, and it's pretty common, and is rape, incest, threat to the life of the mother, and an inviable fetus. At the end of the day, the bottom line is that it's still the mother's choice between her and her physician. So minimally, what I just named and mentioned, what I just mentioned, but basically it's between the mother and the physician, in my opinion.
Okay, so do you think that abortion should be legal in most cases? Do I understand that correctly?
I think abortion is a complex issue, and to say, make a blanket statement that it should be, did you say legal in most cases or illegal?
Sounds like you were saying legal in most cases. Is that?
I think it's the woman's choice. And so I do not think the government, it's so interesting to me that people complained for months about being mandated by the government to get vaccines, but they are not willing, now they want the government to dictate to someone else what they should do with their bodies. And it's a travesty that people that have no idea of what these women are going through. As I said, I'm a chaplain, so I've had patients that come in, victims of rape and incest. And some of the women, a couple of them have decided that they were mature enough to carry it full term, but it was their choice. And what I see taken away from us as women, and I am a woman, is free choice. And I just don't think you can make a complex decision, medical, emotional, sociological, spiritual decision like that for someone else.
Okay. I want to ask a little bit about COVID-19 as well. Can you tell me one area where you think Arizona managed the pandemic well, and one area where Arizona mismanaged or failed to live up to its duties?
I think a lot of the failure, the areas of failure was with the people not willing to conform or adhere to the directives that were put into place by the state, by the government, and by cities. A lot of it, I think, was left up to cities. A lot of it was. I think that it was just it's because it was not nipped in the bud from the very beginning by our earlier president, the president that's no longer with us. It was not nipped in the bud within the first 6 months that it raised its horrible head. I knew that we would always be behind the 8 ball. So I don't want to point my fingers to folks. I think they did the best they could with what they had. There was a lot of myself, I was trying to get the vaccine. There was a lot of issues with the internet and online to try to get on the website and sign up for the vaccines and so forth. But I talked to an Army veteran a couple of months ago, and we were talking about that. And he looked at me. He said, "Do you know how many vaccines we have to protect our country, to be in the service?" And I said, "No." I think he said 18, 17. So the people that serve our country, they take vaccines all the time and think nothing of it, so that they can protect themselves and the people who they're around. But I think that the state did, I'd give them, I guess, a C for what they were dealing with. I think that it could have been a lot more communicated. I think it should have been enforced more. I think that if it had been enforced like it should have been, there should have been more support, more resources. I think, and the hospital we were at, we didn't have masks and so forth. We didn't have PPE equipment. So a lot of things that should have been in place before that mandate was given to stay at home. I think that's where they failed. I think a lot of preparation should have been done before that mandate was put into place, especially for the schools, the teachers, and the children, and then the families who were supporting them, especially in the lower income neighborhoods that didn't have internet access and so forth. It was really haphazardly done.
Okay. I also want to ask a question came in from the audience about if you can give an example of a time where you've worked across the aisle to accomplish something, worked with Republicans to get something done for the community.
Well, I'm not an incumbent. If you mean as a legislator, I'm not an incumbent. I mean, I'm not in that seat. But
it sounds like you're involved in the community. Are there any times where you've teamed up with a local person who you did not politically agree with to?
Yes, I did. I actually teamed up about a year and a half ago with Miss Parker, Jacqueline Parker, and can't think of the other person. I know him so well. The state representative that's in the seat now.
John Fillmore.
Fillmore, yes. And I talked to him several times. He was pleasant and open, and we worked. We did converse about that Twin Knolls mining debacle that was going on in my district, and they tried to, as I understand, they tried to address it, but their hands were tied as well. But I did reach out to them, and Mr. Fillmore was very receptive. Ms. Parker was not. She did communicate one time. She let me know that something had got done. So I did work with them because I feel like this. I'm not running against anyone. I'm running for something. So I'm not going to run against and belittle folk, my opponents and people that are running for the same office when I think I can represent myself and I can do something within myself. I don't have to put them down for me to look good and to feel good. That's who I am. I mean, my spiritual base, I'm a pastor, I'm a chaplain. I'm used to working with diverse groups, diverse faith, no faith. I promote, and I said this before when I ran before, I do believe in a golden rule, and I try to promote it and practice it, that you treat others as you want to be treated. I'm not going to belittle and demean my opponents and that I may have to work with in a couple of months. I'll be sitting in the same room with them. So I am for reconciliation. I mean, if you're a Christian, as people say they are, you are a proponent, as Jesus Christ was, a proponent of reconciliation and negotiation and trying to get along with other folks.
Okay. Ms. Hunter, we're running out of time, but we cannot talk about the 2022 election without mentioning 2020. I assume you believe that Joe Biden won the 2020 election fair and square. Correct me if I'm wrong. But if that is correct, my question is, a huge part of the population does not believe that's the case. What can you do as a state lawmaker to convince them otherwise?
Well, I think that everything has been done that I would think of is to present the facts and the fact that even the recount that was done. Well, Joe Biden did win, and I don't want to call people a liar, but it is a lie. What's coming out of their mouth that the person that they lost, and it's getting to be pretty it's pretty hypocritical because if my dear brothers and sisters in the Republican Party, if they lose, then it was the election was stolen. But when they win, there's no problem with that. So I like to see more, talk to them about being more realistic. And people have to learn to think for themselves. My grandmother taught me every tub has to stand on its own bottom. You know the truth, you see it. And even though the truth may be something that you don't like, you don't want, it's hard to stomach, you should stand for what you say you stand for. And some people say it's ignorance. I don't think so much ignorance as the fact that you want to promote something to you benefit more than the others that you're being dishonest with. So the 2020 election was a fair election, and the aftermath has been devastating. But I would like to be in the State House because I am a proponent of democracy. I believe in democracy. We have fought for this. I remember when women didn't even have rights to vote, but our democracy is being challenged, and people that are challenging that and are not telling the truth, shame on them. Shame on them, because even the Republican officials guaranteed that the election in our state the electoral count in our state was correct, and so did judges that dismissed it. So if you don't want the truth, I think that old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. I just pray that they will come to their senses and vote for the person that really embodies the values that they cherish, that they value. And if you value someone that's dishonest, that's cheating, that wants to take everything, greedy and powerful, and everybody else, has nothing, then just understand that you might be in that position sometime yourself. And it's definitely not democratic. And this is supposed to be a democracy. In democracy, whoever wins automatically takes over the office. And you should do nothing to prevent that.
Okay. Well, we've hit our 30 minutes, but why don't you take a moment or two to kind of recap for the voters and give your final pitch here?
Well, I just like to let the voters know that I am a person for the people, that I love working with all diverse groups, and I'm committed to that. I do believe in being honest and telling the truth, that everyone should vote, and you should vote your conscience, and your conscience, for those who say they are people of the Christians, believers, whatever your faith is, you should honor that and also depict that. You should exhibit your faith. If you don't have that type of background, I've got plenty of friends that are atheists and agnostics. They're good moral people, and they do right for other humans, for humanity. And that's who I am. That's what led me to the pastoral calling. It led me to chaplaincy, caring for the others. And that's what we are called to do. Not only that, even in our Constitution, our Statute of Liberty says, bring me your tired, your huddled masses, you're sick, so that they can obtain freedom. So we have to work for the good of all people, not for just a few. We have to learn to sacrifice. Those who have been blessed to have a lot more, they should be willing to share their prosperity with others who are in dire need. And I would be a candidate that would look at the whole picture and try to do the best for the most good, and try to represent the will of the people that I'm sent to represent. Listen, learn, research. Become a very well apprised and abreast of the topics and issues that I have to vote on and legislate, and try to do it in honesty, with decent dignity and decency and concern and love for the people that I'm representing. I would say to the people, vote. Vote like your life depends on it, because it does. vote for democracy. Your vote, democracy, depending on your vote. I think we are under threat. Encourage your family, your relatives to get out and vote. That nonsense I'm hearing that your vote doesn't count, it does. If it did not count, why do you think there's so much effort to suppress it? Vote, volunteer, donate, give for the person that you believe you know represents what you know, what your mother and father taught you. Those of you who don't believe, who want to believe that the election was stolen, go back to your roots. What your parents taught you, be honest, a hard day's work, all the different values we learned as young people. And sometimes you have to be a good loser. But when you lose, a lot of times, when you lose what you want, a lot of times that loss is a win for a whole lot of other people. And we have to look at the greater good. And that's what the legislature should be doing, not catering to the whims and preferences of folks who are in power and have lots of money. Because that's not their job. Their job is to represent the people who sent them there with your eyes across the whole state of Arizona to make the best decisions for the best you can for as many people as you can.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Ms. Hunter, for taking the time to participate tonight. And to the voters, we thank all of you who took the time to watch tonight's event and inform yourself before the November 8th general election. As a reminder, the voter registration deadline is October 11th and early voting begins October 12th. All registered voters can participate in the general election, and we encourage you to visit azcleanelections.gov for official, accurate voting information. Thank you so much, Ms. Hunter. We appreciate your time.
And remember, democracy matters. Thank you.
Thank you.